Hey, Jenny.
Hey,
Good
Jenny.
evening and welcome to the families who are joining us for the first time tonight, and welcome back to those who joined us last year. That would be last week.
Yeah.
The Parenting Center at Children's
Seemed like a
Hospital New
year.
Orleans presents conversations about race. Our topic today is how race impacts you. Last week we discussed how race impacts communities. We are joined by two awesome presenters, Barbara Major, Diana Dunn of People's Institute. My name is X Patrice Wright. I'm the administrative manager at the Parenting Center, a children's hospital department dedicated to helping parents and grandparents deal with the ordinary challenges of raising children. At the end of the series, a list of resources, suggested books, and readings for parents and children will be sent to you via email. Please be advised that this series will be recorded. However, comments from the chat box will not be. Feel free to submit questions throughout today's presentations. We'll try to answer as many as possible. We also encourage that you use the chat box for any comments or feelings or thoughts you may have. By Friday, we will provide the list of resources to you. And in that email, you will also receive an evaluation. We ask that you take the time to share with us your thoughts about the series, as we are hoping to be able to make some adjustments moving forward based on the recommendations that you suggest. I now would like to turn it over to Ms. Barbara.
Thank you, Patrice. Want to say hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to those of you who've spent some time with Diana and I, Patrice, previously. And for those of you who this may be your first time, I'm not sure, but welcome as well. My name is Barbara Major, and we'll introduce, Diana and I will introduce ourselves briefly. I am a community organizer. That means I do a lot of things in the community where social justice is the center. So I've been around from New Orleans, been around a very long time, excited to be doing this work with the Parenting Center. And Patrice, I so appreciate you organizing these conversations. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I'm a trainer with the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. Our national office is here, but we have regional offices in other places around the country, but I won't spend a lot of time talking about them. But just happy to have folk here. And I think maybe most of you are from New Orleans. I'm not, or the surrounding area, the greater New Orleans region. And that is most exciting to me, because doing this work at home always warms my heart. I can do it, I travel all over the world and bring these conversations. But when I can talk to folk at home, when we can create an environment where we can have honest discussions about this thing called race and what has happened to us, what has been done to all of us, not just people of color, but what has been done to all of us. So I'm excited about tonight, and we will definitely have you type in the chat. And if you're like me, I don't care how bad your spelling is. If I can figure it out, just put it in the chat. We'll figure it out. So please feel free to ask questions, and we will at the end allow folks just a minute or two longer than just to think about what has been presented. And before I go into just bringing us back up to kind of where we are now, I'll ask my colleague Diana Dunn to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diana Dunn, and like Barbara, I'm an organizer. I was not born and raised in New Orleans, but I've been here for 6 years. And my daughter was raised here. We came here when she was about 9 months old. I just wanted to say that I have two children, and they're both biological. One is white and one is black. So this has been real important to me to be able to talk to my kids about race and racism. My second husband was black, and he actually was one of the founders of the People's Institute, but he has transitioned now. And so I have two grandchildren, and those grandchildren are both white, and I have four great grandchildren. Two are white and two are black. And the reason I say that is that it's important how we talk to our children. And I've had three generations now that I've had to talk to. So I have to base it on what's happening at the world at the time. that they are growing up. It was different when my son's 50, my daughter's 36, my grandchildren are 30 and 27, and my great grands are 5, 3, 2, 1. So how I talk to them will be quite different than I talk to my children. So I just wanted to say that we have to know what's happening, and we have to have an understanding and a base knowledge of what is race and racism before we can really talk to them. We have to get enough history behind us so that we feel comfortable. True history, not necessarily the history you read in your textbooks, but true history so we can talk to our children. And
Thank you.
oh,
Thank
that's
you.
it. Yeah.
Thanks, Dee Dee. One of the things I just want to do a brief summary of kind of what we've talked about for the last 2 sessions. This is our third and our final session. However, we don't know if it's final, because maybe we'll continue to have these conversations through the Parenting Center. But right now we have these three sessions. So for the first session, for those of you who were not here, we defined race, because we want to have conversations about racism, and we've not defined race in this country. Everybody have their own definition. So hopefully what we did was to demystify this concept of race, that it is in fact not real. It is made up. However, this ideology of race has been institutionalized in every system in this country. Now, that didn't mean we could just go get rid of race, because the reality is the length of time that this illusion has been around, it is not easily to dismiss or just disregard, because race now is the only way that we can demonstrate disparities. And every system in this country is demonstrating racial disparities. So race is required, but maybe one day, maybe not in my lifetime or Diana's, but who knows, that we will not define people by race. The second one, and when you get your, for those of you who may not have been here, when you get your resource list, we will put that definition down. And what we say in these conversations, because that's what it is, it's not so much about agreeing, but hopefully folk will know that what we don't agree on, that we'll have some common language that we speak, because oftentimes we speak over each other. The second conversation that we had the second Wednesday was to look at communities, struggling, marginalized communities. And Diana has this picture up, and we talked about it in terms of power relationships to community. You cannot talk about race without understanding power and its position with race that causes all the harm that we've seen engendered across this culture and this society. We talk about race here in the United States. We know that globally racism exists in lots of other places, but we keep that conversation here. And as Diana said, when we really understand the origin story of this country for real, you know what I'm saying? Rather than all the lies we've been told. And if we really understood the origin, we will know that there was no necessity for the lies, because there were good things and good people and beautiful events that happened in the building of this nation. However, the lies have become the very cord that has never been severed. And therefore, it's very hard for us to hold on to each other. Those of us called white and those of us called people of color, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color in this country. So that is briefly, but if there's something that you really want to ask about those 2 sessions, please jot your questions down, and when we come back, and you can ask if you have a question now, because there's no way that we can do 1.5-hour sessions and really give you everything. Can't give you all of the history, but what we want folk to do is to know that we don't know as much as we think we know about race and racism in this country, that there's yet so many questions to be asked, so that we can get some clarity on what is this thing dividing us, and what is this thing that every generation, it keeps repeating itself. We cannot get rid of it. So what is it? And maybe what we want to talk about, and people keep asking the question, is how do we fix it? There is no quick fix to this, y'all. This has been around way longer than we have. There's no quick fix, but there are things that we can do to impact its impact on people, the negative impact that race has on people. And we also believe that when we talk about undoing racism or dismantling racism, it's not solely about saving Black folk and indigenous folk and other people of color. It's about saving everybody's humanity. Because what racism does and the concept of race does, it strips us, it demeans us, and it diminishes the humanity of all of us. And so I don't know if there's a particular question, but that foot, and I know when you look at that drawing, Diana's a really good artist. But when you look at that drawing, all of those red things around that are systems that impact people in those communities every day. And folk, we always want to look in the community. We want to go in the community and fix the people without understanding that all of these systems are engaging people in a way that keeps breaking the people. So it's like we got to deal with these systems. Doesn't mean it's not an either or. We got to work in these communities because so much damage has been done. But these communities are also not solely communities of color. You have white communities in the same fix, same kind of dynamics going on. Children on drugs, everything you can name going on. So we got white communities and communities of color, but we know that there's an inability, it seems, in this country to bring those communities together and say, you know what, all of our children are suffering from this. Because in reality, if any of our children in this country are being discarded, it takes a toll on the rest of the children. So when we talk about race and racism, it's not something in the abstract. It's what's happening to people every day. Our minds, our souls, and our bodies. This stuff impacts us physically.
That's right.
On you, Dee Dee.
Okay. So one of the things we thought we would talk about, I don't know if any of you read this. There's a book out called Nurture Shock, and it was written by Pro Bronson and Ashley Merriman. That was a married couple that wrote the book. But they did a study in Austin, Texas, and they brought together about 100 families, all of which were interested in diversity and all of those kinds of words. And they wanted to do an experiment with them to see what really helps children understand race. And there were about 100 families, and they all had children that were 5 to 7 years old. And they asked the children a lot of questions. They asked them how many white people are nice, or how many Black people are nice. And as they looked at it, they began to see that white children would say that pretty much all white people are nice, and that pretty much not all Black people are nice. So they wanted to do something to help them look a little bit bigger at what was happening. So they divided the 100 into 3 groups. And the first group, they hoped that by showing them videos, that they would change, the racial attitude would change. But they found that the ones that they just showed videos, like there were videos from Sesame Street, or characters visiting African-American families, and another one with Little Bill. So the message from all of those is that we're all friends, which was way too vague for the children. Their attitudes didn't change at all. So the second group, they got the same videos, and then they were given a checklist that helped them talk about racial differences. And they really believed that that would work if they just talked to the kids about it. The third group, they gave them the checklist on how to talk to your kids about race, and then they needed to discuss it every night. And families started dropping out like crazy. And these were liberal families that felt that they believed in openly talking to their children. But they found out that they weren't able to talk to the children. And once the families realized this study required them to have an open talk about race, they started dropping out. And Barbara's and my contention is that they had no background with which to talk about race. How could they talk to them about it, particularly to young kids? These kids were between 5 and 7 years old. So it says it was, I'll read it to you. It was no surprise that in a liberal city like Austin, every parent was a welcoming multiculturalist embracing diversity. But according to the surveys, hardly any of the white parents had ever talked to the children about race. They might have asserted vague principles like everybody's equal, or God made us all, or under the skin we're all the same, but they never pointed out the differences in race and the treatment of race. And so as they did this, what was most disturbing to the authors of this is they asked the Black children, do your parents like Black people? And 14% said outright, no, my parents don't like Black people. And 38% of the kids said, I don't know. That's because they're not being talked to, and the parents probably don't have friends that come over, or they aren't in multiracial places. The parents aren't. You know, we put our kids in multiracial settings, but are the parents in multiracial settings? However, of all those, of all that been told to talk openly about interracial friendships, only 6 families managed to actually do so. They talked to their children about interracial friendships. And for all 6, their children dramatically improved their racial attitudes in 1 week. In 1 week, just talking to them. Talking about race was clearly the key. And the author said a lot of parents came to me afterwards and admitted they just didn't know how to talk to their kids, and they didn't want the wrong thing coming out of their mouth. So if we don't talk to our kids, then they have to make certain assumptions on their own. And if you see a lot of Black kids or Native kids or Latino kids in your school and you never talk to them, then they make assumptions, and they start making assumptions very early in life. They also learn to categorize very early in life, and this is really important. So most kids know that pink is for girls and blue is for boys. But when it comes to white people and Black people, this one was done on white people and Black people, we leave it up to them to figure out. And so they have to figure it out, and in their thinking and what their thinking is. Let me give you an example of what they did. They, a group of 4 and 5-year-olds, 3 preschool classes. On half the kids, they put them in blue t-shirts, and half of them they put in red t-shirts. So the kids did not segregate in their behavior. They played the way they always had. They played with the same people they played with. And usually when kids are 4 and 5 or younger, they play with all different color people. And they didn't choose who they played with by the color of t-shirt. But when they asked the children about those kids with the red t-shirts or those people with the blue t-shirts, if they were red t-shirts, they said, we were smarter and we are nicer and we are better. And the blue t-shirt kids said, we are nicer, we are better, we are smarter, which really surprised them, which made them understand that we need to start talking to our kids as early as the age of 3. Because at 6 months, children notice the difference. So if you're a white family and you show the picture of a Black child to a baby 6 months old, they're going to stare at the Black child a lot longer because it's not common to them. And Black children will stare at white families because it's not common to them. It's something that's different. And they have to put attributes to why this is different. So 6 months old. And I have to tell you a story about my daughter, who's a very light-skinned Black girl. And so she was probably about 2.5 when this happened. And she didn't get her hair till she was 2. And so when she started getting her hair, it was just wild hair, right? So we had gone out to pick up some dinner. I don't know if any of you remember Tortilla Flats, but we went to Tortilla Flats to get a dinner. And Jim, her father, who is Black, was in the car. He wasn't feeling well, so he stayed in the car. So we sat at the bar waiting for our meal. So I was on the right side of Maisha, and there was a white man on the left side of Maisha. And he started talking to me about how trifling Black people were in this city. And I'm going, oh my God, I have to say something. I have to say something. What am I going to say? And Maisha looked at me and she looked at him and she looked at me and she looked at him as I'm sitting there trying to, how am I going to stop this? And finally, she ripped her hat off her head and looked at him, because when he saw her hair, he knew she was Black. So even though she didn't have a language to talk about it, and quite frankly, neither did I at that point have a language. What am I going to say to interrupt it? She wanted him to know that she was Black, and you can't say that. So I've learned a lot from my kids, believe me. So what is in any of you think anything about any of that I just read? I've got some other stuff I can, but what do you think about that?
Somebody said, go cat, go her.
Oh, my daughter, my daughter.
Maisha, no, Maisha, somebody was rooting for you.
She has taught me so much in life, but we have to understand how early that kids
Stuff,
categorize.
yes.
Music, all panels in attendance. Please make sure you comment. You have selected all panels in attendance. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But great story. Will said that was a great story. Yeah. And I think a lot of us can think about those great stories. But the most important about it is that if we don't talk to our kids about race, by
Right.
third grade, the window of opportunity to talk to them is shut. That's what they say. It's already closed. So we have to begin when kids turn 3. We have to start talking to them. And when they did another thing where they showed photographs of children and asked them who they would choose to be their friends. When children turned 3, they showed them these pictures of white and Black kids. White kids, 86% picked children of their own race. When the kids were 5 or 6, Katz gave them a small, this is the author of this, gave them a small deck of cards with drawings of people on them. And they asked them to just put them in piles. They didn't tell them how to put them in piles. And when they did it, only 16% of the kids used gender to make the piles, but 68% of the white kids used race to split the cards. So kids are noticing this. So what are we going to do? What can we do to stop this? We're asking you, what are you doing and telling your kids?
Or what do you think can be done? And what kids feel, because people don't understand kids feel this stuff. My youngest son, who I'd always, when he came along, I'd talked about race and racism all the time. And he had gone to the store. He's a little kid, right? Gone to the store, and he came back and he said, Mom, there was like a corner store. We were living at that time on Magazine Street. He said, Mom, he said, the people in that store, talking about the folk who own the store, whatever. He said, they're racist. And, you know, as a little kid, and he heard me talking about racism all the time. And I said, you sure? I said, how do you know they were racist? And he said to me, I felt it, Mama. And I had to realize, when you feel it, you feel it. Because folk think it's not always, you know, the tangible things, but it is the feelings that children receive, and how we respect and listen and hear those feelings for them, so that we just don't dismiss what they're feeling. Not just kids, adults feel it. Yes. I grew up around, I'm gonna read Richards. I grew up around so many Black kids, that was my normal. My folks pulled me out of mostly white basketball leagues to go play in one where there was only a handful of white kids. So those actions were a way of speaking. And I long past the 3-year-old window, but this is helping me to think about how to talk to them now. Absolutely. It's never, as Tania, it's never too late, because they're seeing it and they're feeling it. And we have to engage them. It's like, maybe, I don't care, maybe 15, whatever age. We've got to figure it out. But one of the things in us having these conversations is we can't talk to our children if we don't understand, you know, ourselves.
That's
If
right.
we confused, we talk to them and we confuse them even more. We have to be really clear on what is this thing called race and racism. And then we can articulate it in a way that does not frighten children, but help them understand what they see, because they are seeing it. The $1,000,000 question. That's why we're here listening. We all want to be part of the solution, but we don't know what that is. That's Stacy. I hear you, Stacy. And part of the solution is us getting clear on what race and racism is, because we all now working on the very different understandings and definitions of what that is. Most of us really don't even know the history of how it was put in place. One, education. It's like education is a good thing unless you educating folk based on some fallacies and some non-truths. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's not that we're dumb, we don't understand. I didn't always understand, but I know that I could talk and speak clearer to my sons about this stuff when I understood it, because I had to speak to him. Now, I'm being really clear. I had to speak to them in a way that they understood, not in a way to frighten them. But as Black men, I had to also speak in a way that they understood what it meant to be a Black man here and the different nuances they were going to have to navigate as Black men.
And many more Black families talk to their kids than white families. White families don't talk to their kids about race. And I don't mean just about color differences, but about race difference. Let me just read this to you real quick. Um, Bigler ran a study in which children read brief biographies of famous African Americans. For instance, in a biography of Jackie Robinson, they read that he was the first American in the major leagues, but only half read about how he'd previously been relegated to the Negro League and how he suffered taunts from the fans. Those facts in 5 brief sentences were admitted in a version given to other children. After a 2-week history class, the children surveyed again on their racial attitudes. White children who got the full story about historical discrimination had significantly better attitudes towards Blacks than those who got the neutered version. So telling the truth is okay, to tell children the truth about it and that this is real. Did you see some of the other ones on there?
Yeah, this is Haley. In my kindergarten classroom, we talk about the color of our skins in the first couple of weeks, and you realize that just giving them the space to talk about skin color makes it feel more natural to them.
Point.
They are all thinking about it, and somehow we're taught not to talk about it. Got that right. We talk about race throughout the whole year, and they become more and more confident in talking about differences. Super important. Once we start talking about equality, equity, and fairness, absolutely. And it's like you can't talk to children like you talk to an adult, but there are ways that we can explain it to them where they understand it. They are smart. They're smarter than us. And you start talking about it. I love the fact that you said it's natural, because when we don't talk about it, Haley, it's like it's unnatural, or children are afraid to ask the questions. Why is her hair different from my hair? It's like, and they have all this inside, and when you don't talk about it like you're talking about it with them, they think that there's something wrong in the difference and that it's not natural, it's different.
That's right. And
Somebody said, oh, there's another one. How do kids make friends and socialize outside of immediate social circles?
they do up until about kindergarten. And that's when they start separating. So little kids, 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds will be playing together, but outside of that, they don't play together. They start because nobody's talked to them about racism. There's a story in here that talks about a family that kept telling their 5-year-old son, everybody's equal, everybody's equal. And about 7 months later, after telling them that, the kids said, what does equal mean? So
Yeah.
we don't even define the words that we're saying. But so, I mean, socializing across race is hard. Barbara and I are good work partners and we work together and we talk to each other very seriously. But my closest friends, where I talk my most intimate feelings, are white. And I'm sure that's true of Barbara, that intimate
And
are
a Black, right?
Black. And so it is hard for all of us to do that. It is hard. And the only reason that Barbara and I remain friends is because she can be honest with me. And believe me, I fought her in the beginning, right? I said, "Oh, that's not true. That's not true. That's not what I did." But honesty is the best thing that we can do.
There are a couple of comments that you guys missed. I wanted to make
Oh,
sure that we
good. Thanks,
acknowledge.
Patrice.
No worries. It says, I'm long past the 3-year-old window, but this is helping me to think about how to talk to them now. Kids are
Yes.
smart. They
Yes,
understand
they
so
are.
much, but it's very hard when the schools in NOLA are deeply segregated.
Yes.
Yes.
But can I say something about that?
Yeah.
That unfortunately, children, particularly children of color that go through segregated schools all throughout their career, do better in integrated settings at the end of school. Black children that have to go to school in integrated settings have a harder time because they haven't been nurtured the way they are nurtured in a surrounding where their teachers look like them, all of the people look like them, and they nurture them. As a matter of fact, of the studies that have been done, going to integrated schools gives you just as much chance to learn stereotypes as to unlearn them. So we don't necessarily unlearn them. And that just putting children together without having the critical discussions and without listening and believing to children of color, it doesn't work.
There's a Baby Ben is an A school and most uptown white parents don't even know about it. That's just a comment, I guess. And then I know places where the only time teachers talk to kids about race is Black History Month.
Right.
And yeah, and then by that point in the year, the kids are like, what? How do I talk about this? We have to give them the space to talk to each other about race all year. That's right, and facilitate it. But that's when we understand how this construct has been put in place. And even when they talk about Black history, it's watered down. But we got to understand the curriculum, and it says school curriculum needs to be changed. Yes, it does. So I don't know if they're asking, it might be Kat. So can you talk about the physical differences between people and what makes them special in different ways? Is that it's a question. Well, yeah, I mean, you can talk about the physical difference because children they see the physical differences, but it's like what makes, not in terms of makes them special in different ways, but what makes them different. What is it that make us look different? We need to know what that is. It has to do with where our people come from on the planet Earth. I mean, these things we must know to be able to talk to children. The main thing is that we help children to understand that differences does not mean deficits. And then when we don't talk to them, that's how it gets interpreted, because all of the systems set up, whether we talking to children or not, everything they see around them is saying that there's something deficit in these differences. That's where we got to come in. It is not always convenient, but white parents have to find sincere ways to share space with Black and brown people.
That's
Statement.
right. That's
Yep.
right. Absolutely. And
Yep.
there are many ways that you can do it, but don't do it without talking to your children about race, because when you integrate, white children that don't have an understanding will harm children of color. I mean, it's just the way it is because they have no understanding about it.
And Richard says, isn't it almost as important for parents to take their kids to integrated playgrounds and city park outdoor gyms and NORD facilities as it is to speak to them? Richard, we've been hanging out with each other a long time, but if we seeing what we see and nobody is helping explain what we see, just us being together as people does not negate that we're still internalizing the concepts and idea of different being deficit. So
Right.
that's a part of it. but we can, that ain't even integration. Not really. That's desegregation. I'll put it like that because there's a difference. Yeah, that's decent, but that's not integration. When we can really have these conversations, that's a part of it. But I would not say no, it's not as important, because the important thing is there are towns in this country, let's just say, and spaces in this city where it's all white. So it's like, yeah, well, they can go bring their kids to the park, but if they're not talking to those kids, when they bring them back to that white community, their kids are not getting necessarily, see, there's some differences, but they're not understanding what those differences are.
That's
Somebody said Black History Month equal Martin Luther King.
right,
All
right.
right. Or get involved with programs like Son of a Saint. Yeah, where they do more than, but actually have conversations to help young people understand. Because and Richard, is Son of a Saint, is it, I don't know what the demographics are. Is it all Black? What is Son of a Saint? I know you can't write your whole thing, but I just know it's a really good program. But there are some programs. I tell you, we really, in this city, there are not a lot of programs that exist where we can help facilitate these conversations. Sometimes that's why we're doing this at the parenting center when it should be in the damn school. Excuse me, I hope y'all don't have no children listening. When it should be in the schools itself.
Yep, yep. You might write about that. Can I say another thing? That one thing that we do a lot.
Somebody said differences do not mean deficits. Okay, stealing that statement. That's all right. I probably stole it from somebody.
One of the things we do with white children is we shush them. If they say something like, oh, that person's got black skin, we shush them. And so then they get afraid to ask questions or talk a lot about it. And that's really the wrong reflex. We have to to talk to them, and because what they said is very normal and natural. So I'll tell you another Maisha story. So Maisha was dating a white man, and they went to his family in Pennsylvania, and they were all sitting around. There were some young kids there, and they were all sitting around, and one of the kids asked, are you and your boyfriend, are you, the two of them, are you going to get married? And one of the young kids, probably about 5 years old, yelled out, they can't do that. And of course, all the parents were worried about Maisha and said, oh, shh, don't say that, don't say that. And Maisha, in all of her wisdom, said, well, no, wait a minute, I want to hear what he has to say. And she said, it's okay that you said that, but what makes you say that? Well, he had been watching cartoons, and in the cartoons, I don't remember what one it was or anything like that, the green people hung out with the green people, the blue people hang out with the blue people, and the orange people hang out with the orange people. So he didn't think that it was possible to take a white person and a black person and for them to get married. So one of the major things you can do is look at the books they're reading, look at the things they're watching on TV, and make sure they're not translating it that way. Whenever I read Maisha's stories when she was a little girl, I always had colored pencils for her to, she could change the color of anybody in the book if she wanted to. She could scratch out words that she didn't like, and she could change the word. She felt so empowered because she wasn't going to take what those fairy tales were saying. And that's very empowering. I mean, don't be afraid to read them those kinds of things, but give them a space where they can discuss it.
Richard has, oh, thank you, Richard. Richard put in there about Son of a Saint that this event is an educator through some organization. So without them, I wouldn't have known about this and learn about everything. Yeah, Son of a Saint is a real. Maybe I'm a little biased because I know Sonny, but I just know the commitment of the folk that work with these young men. What I will suggest that even with these young men, particularly that they have a space to talk about this stuff, because a lot of what they're without fathers, and so that you create in Son of a Saint, and you may have already, that they can have these conversations, because they seeing and feeling a lot of this stuff. I don't know if it's, I think it's just whatever kid can join, but they can have these conversations, and that these conversations must be facilitated, because they are, I mean, they're difficult conversations to have, that they're facilitated by someone that can help them talk about it in a way that is not shaming or blaming or pointing fingers. But these young people are seeing this stuff, and we have to know how to help them navigate it, to think it through, to use those critical thinking skills to figure some of this out, because you can't spoon feed them all of it. But thank y'all for doing that work at Son of a Saint too. 'Cause I know the work. This is an organization I can speak about. So,
Kat said she loves my daughter because she's smarter than I am.
oh, you would. That's my baby Maisha. Yeah. And Maisha, let me tell you, all this stuff when we talk about race, Maisha, you know, one of the strengths of Maisha, she had to navigate through that Black thing too, because she's light. And this whole thing around colorism and the impact that even those of us who are Black deal with those of us who are lighter or darker, all these dynamics. We didn't create this mess. But it's amazing to me that young people can survive it. I think they have way more than what I had. I know they do. So they have a lot to survive and get through. And as much as we possibly can, we've got to help them understand what they're seeing so that they don't turn it in on themselves either.
And also, Maisha had no words to tell me what was happening to her when she was really young, about the light skin and black skin, and how she was treated um, by people that were darker skinned. And because she didn't have the words, then I started thinking, you know what I need to do? I need to get a light skinned Black babysitter. And I got a light skinned Black babysitter. So she might have been taking so much guff from some of the darker skinned kids at school. So the light skinned babysitter worked with her. And then and I got a call from the school and they said that Maisha just slugged or hit a little boy in the stomach. And I was so proud of her because she stood up for herself. But how do you give
We didn't advocate violence, y'all, but hey.
So what was sad is that she didn't have the words to tell me, and
Right.
that's why she needed Black women in her life. But I didn't always know that. So we've all got our things that we have to deal with. I have to tell you about another family, Louise Derman Sparks, who does
Yeah.
a lot of work about um, um, uh, teaching children from look up Louise Derman Sparks. They'll tell you. Well, matter of fact, we'll put some of her books. Let me write that down, Louise Derman. Okay, so she started working with teachers that could teach children how to do these discussions and how to do that. But Louise and her husband were white, and they lived in an all-white neighborhood. So she learned a lot from this. So they went on a trip once, and then they went on a trip. They were in the airport, and the kids are walking along, and they see two Black men dressed in three-piece suits carrying briefcases, and the kids yelled out, "Look, it's the garbage men," because the only Black people they had ever seen were the garbage men. So so even as educated as she was, she did not talk to them about not all Black people are garbage men, right? So things like that can happen to us all the time.
Leslie commented, read what they are reading at school too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in the resources that Patrice will send out, there will be a list of books. There are organizations around this country really grappling with this, and understand there are no quick answers to this, because we've just started writing books to address these kinds of issues. But there are books, and they're wonderful authors. So we will send a list that was created by basically white parents to help them raise their white children, not to buy into or believe a lot of the stuff that they hear, and to help them understand the things they were seeing. So that list will be attached to your resource packet. And we won't give y'all a whole 1,000 things. It's like, no, everybody can't do all of that, but we'll have some links in there that you can check out as well.
You know, one of the things Barbara and I talked about is to really point out how white this world is, and what kids see all around them are so many white people. I mean, not as many in New Orleans. They see some more black people. So I have this list of different occupations, et cetera, in this country, and I want to read it to you. Now, this list was made um, before the 2014 election, before Trump was elected. So I want you to just read it. I need to update it now that Biden's been elected, because it's changed a lot. But what do you think? 78% of Congress were white, right? 95% of the governors were white. 100% of the president and vice president at that time were white. 91% of their cabinet was white. 93% of the people who decide what's available for us to see on TV are white. 93% who decide what we can see on TV. 90% of the people who decide what's available for us to read, that's published to read, 90% of them are white. 85% of the people who decide what news you will hear are white. 95% of the people who decide what music is available to you listen to for purchase are white. 84% of the people who decide what art is available to you for you to enjoy are white. 83% of the teachers in this country at that time were white. 84% of the full-time college professors are white. Greater than 90% of the prosecutors in this country are white. Greater than 90% of the judges in this country are white. And 97% of the owners of football teams are white. And I always thought that was a funny one. And then they said, no, they control what? Sunday night, Thursday night, Saturday, all the TV they control. And 93% of nonprofit chief executive officers are white. 92% of the nonprofit boards are white. 83% of nonprofit staff are white. And 60% of nonprofits see their mission as serving people of color. I just want to let that sink in. It's a white world in terms of what is controlling us. When teachers decide that they want to talk about race, they have to be very careful, because white families will jump down their throats. You need to educate the parents, Barbara, right? That if a teacher wants to talk to the kids, she needs to let the parents know if they have any questions.
That's right.
Right.
In fact, there's a bill now. They didn't kill the bill. It's still alive at the state legislature here in Louisiana, to make sure that these discussions do not happen in school. And they even attempted it at the college level. I think it's 554, because I had to follow all this insanity. And it's so crazy, because the guy who introduced the bill said that, well, we can talk about slavery, but we got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And even another Republican said, what's good about slavery? Well, I didn't really mean. It's like, you think that, we've come really far, but that is in the state, that is legislation that he's probably going to introduce again. It got to a stalemate. So it didn't pass, it didn't fail, it's just there. So he's withdrawn it, but he's coming back with it, where we cannot talk about any of these conversations. And it's race, sexuality issues, none of this. So it's like, at the same time we're trying to move forward, we've got to understand that these systems are pushing back. And so we've got to, keep these conversations going, build a critical base among our friends to say, we got to talk about this. We're not going to always get it right. One of the things was asking Patrice, is like, you both are friends, and it's obvious there's respect. What is the secret ingredient into maintaining a friendship where you can call each other out on things? Listening is one, not reacting. Becoming defensive is another. Not telling each other how they should feel. Thank you. What works for you too? You've listed some of them. I mean, for me, it's like doing this work, having these conversations. When you enter a conversation, you got to have first the respect that whomever you are talking to is a human being. whatever their actions are. So I got to start there, and I got to start from me. And it's different for other people. It's like Diana. I loved Diana. Did I love her when I first met her? Hell no, she a white woman. I'm from New Orleans. I'm a black woman. No. And it's like, so I had to deal with my stuff too. When I understood racism, when I had a real analysis of racism, I better understood that why Diana didn't understand. See, I just thought, well, I don't understand why she don't see the world the way that I see it. This is the way it is. Well, yeah, it was that way for me, but that wasn't her reality. And building this relationship over these 40 years has not always been easy, but there was an agreement that we cared enough about each other and the work that we were doing that we would never leave the table. You become family. So we're gonna slug it out. Not physically, but we're gonna slug it out. Do we always come to total agreement? No, we don't. But in family, you have disagreements, but you care enough about each other. And for us, I know I'll say for me, the work that we do is so important that one, I don't have the right or the privilege to throw folk away who want to do this work. However, the thing about Diana is that she hears me, she listens to me, and she believes me when I say something. If I say, Diana, I'm feeling that one over there, not getting it, she know that I'm on it. I can feel you. And they're not there with us. She gets that. And so that mutual respect was earned. People think, well, you ought to just trust me. No, history does not give me that privilege. That trust and that respect has been earned over 40 years. Did it take us 40 years to become as close as we are? No, it didn't take that long, but it has evolved. But we had to understand the history between us as two women, and as one being white and one being a woman of color. There's a deep cut and a deep wound with women of color and white women. So these relationships are so possible, but they're not easy. But the commitment to stay, because the work is important, that we see beyond ourselves, that I think is one of the ingredients. Because I have a great deal of respect for her mind, and I have a great deal of respect for her commitment. And let me tell you something, I told her, and it was like, I saw how she loved that Black man she was married to, and how she cared, because Jim was like my brother, how she cared for him as he was transitioning. Jim had multiple myeloma, and that wasn't a quick and easy death. But I saw her journey with him, with the patience and the love and the respect. It's like, sister, I'm here. That there are things that happen in our lives where we've had to support each other. And I mean, there ain't no, like, I can't tell you, oh, that's it. I can sum it all up and put it in a bottle. But for me, that's kind of it.
That's good. And I have to say that honesty was the thing that really made it work, that Barbara could always be honest with me. I thought in the beginning, I tried to justify what I was doing in the beginning. And then I realized I had to listen because her experiences were different than mine. So listening became really, really important. But the fact that Barbara now can be, because you might get so mad at a bunch of white women, you're not going to be honest with them. You just say, screw them, right? I'm not going to talk, they're not going to listen. But when I realized that her honesty could get me to another place, and I will say that I was much more interested because I did have a daughter that was Black. I don't know if I would have come around as soon if I didn't have it. But also, the marriage worked between Jim and I, white and Black, because we always talked about racism, both of us, and we fought about it sometimes. We fought about it, but we always talked about it. You can't be in this kind of relationship if you don't understand racism. And as a matter of fact, I don't push women to go into relationships with men of color because we don't understand racism. We don't understand that I'm treated differently, and they're et cetera, et cetera. But I will tell you one other thing too, that, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this one, but I have to mention another thing about my daughter because she's so wise. So
She is.
we were going to do some workshops with families like our family. And she and I are very, very, very close, even though I haven't been able to understand everything that she's went through, but I believe her. And so when I asked her what was the best thing about my parenting, it took her a few minutes, which got me a little worried, but she finally said, "You always believed me." And that is so profound that that has changed every conversation I have with white people. We do not believe people of color. And Jim told me, believe her, because there's nothing else I could do. I made her take responsibility if something happened, her responsibility, but we have to believe people of color and listen to them and be very honest. Can I say one other thing up here that Jenny says, and this is so important? We encourage people to shop local community bookstore is extremely important. You can find books there that we will be mentioning and some that we won't mention. And we do need to do that. Community book center is a really great place to get children's book and to get on
Yes.
the website so that you can hear some of the presentations that they do.
And somebody put, oh yeah, the current suggesting no talking about divisive topics.
Right.
As if we all connected. Come on, man. It's like, I know. Look, some of this stuff you gotta laugh at, even though we know it's really serious, because it's like it's so stupid. However, these stupid suggestions are coming from the seats of power. That's the dangerous thing about this.
So we were thinking maybe we would just take a quick break to give people time to think, right, Barbara, to think
Yes.
about the thing that we've said, maybe take about 10 minutes, come back at about 9 minutes after and continue to put your thoughts in and we'll give you some, what did Patrice call it? Some brain
time. I think she called it brain time.
Brain breaks.
Brain breaks. Yeah. Brain
So
breaks.
we'll see you at 9 minutes after 7. Okay. And keep writing in there and let's all just quiet our minds for a minute.
Keep talking. And one day we'll get to sit down together where we can see each other and get a hug or something.
Right. So we have to be quiet too, because it's right. Yeah. Okay, I'll put myself on.
Dee Dee, what time we come back? 9 after? You said 9 after, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Just a friendly reminder, ladies, that if there is any participant wanting to speak, instead of typing in the chat box, I can grant them access or permission.
Oh, Patrice, yeah. Maybe we can do that. Yeah, let them know so that if they want to do that now.
And we can read the ones that, so Jen asked a really good question.
Yeah.
Thank you all for this information. I'm riled up and ready to jump into discussing things with my son, 7 years old, but I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. Can you give me some scenarios of how you might handle it? What I always say with children is ask them questions. So when you make a comment or when you're in doubt or whatever, you say something, what does that mean to you? What did you hear me say? And if they feel real comfortable and you won't tell them they're wrong, then they'll tell you what they're thinking and let them guide your conversation. Because it's hard for us to think as a 7-year-old. And but don't be afraid to talk about it and ask them questions and try to use words that they can understand, but define those words in ways they can understand. The next one,
I love this one, Aaron, yeah. Aaron, I so appreciate all of you for hosting these conversations. I think we as adults take a really powerful role in modeling how to have conversations about race for kids. When we shy away from them, kids learn that this is something we shouldn't be talking about. Absolutely.
right.
I particularly appreciate the perspective shared about raising a mixed race child. I don't have kids, but I am in an interracial relationship, and I think about what challenges would potentially come with having a child who does not benefit from the same privileges which I do. Thank you so much for your perspective. Thank you
And
for.
they do recognize that when you're getting treated differently, and it's really important. One of the things I think is really important also is to talk to and support your teachers, because they know the language that kids understand at every age, and you and I might not know that. Encourage them to talk about it, share books with them, and encourage the teachers to share the books that might be controversial, particularly with white parents. Share that book with the parents first, and then have that discussion and talk to the other parents in the class about how important this is so they don't get jumped on.
Aaron, if you want the opportunity to speak and Patrice says if anybody wants the opportunity to speak instead of typing in the chat, let her know. Put it in the chat. And Aaron says, also sorry for being such a quiet participant. I'm usually trying to juggle cooking and dog needs around this time, but I'm listening. I hear you. And I'm a white woman and my partner is a Black man. It's been such a learning experience in the way that we can get treated, the way he gets, I guess, can get treated, and figuring out how to navigate it together. I've been thinking a lot about potentially, I guess, having kids and how to help them handle the world. This has been helpful, and it's kind of reassuring that we all are trying to figure it out. Absolutely. None of us have all the answers to this.
And read some of the books in common that will suggest and talk about racism, and talk about every time you notice a difference in treatment. Because I remember going to a computer shop on St. Charles Avenue way back in the day. And every time I'd walk in, there was a guard sitting there, and I would walk in and he'd yell, "Hey," and I'd yell, "Hey," and I'd go to where I was going. Happened every time. And then I walked in with our executive director, who is a Black man, and I yelled, "Hey," as usual. He says, "Where are you going?" And he stopped us and made me come over and sign in. You see that? And so you, as white people, we don't know we're being treated differently. And it's so important to believe that if he says this is how I was treated when I went there, I mean, clearly we can see I'm treated differently by police when I get pulled over. But some of the other ways that we get treated differently, we just have to begin to recognize them and point them out. But you
That's yeah, because we've narrowed the definition of profiling in terms of how negatively people of color are profiled, but we also have to look at how positively people call white are profiled. It's so normative that we don't, Black people see it and think about it, but white people don't necessarily see it happening.
And,
So it's like being vigilant in how you look at the world now to begin, because it's not easy, but we've got to rethink how we've been socialized to see or not see.
and we have to also realize how much implicit bias we have in us, and we don't recognize that implicit bias. And so when you're called on how you are viewing situation, when you're called on it, just ask, could you help me understand what you're saying to me? Don't say, no, 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 I'm not being biased. Yeah, we are being biased. All of us are being biased.
Yeah, everybody.
But, but, but believe the people and what they're saying and talk about it. And if you can't get to a conclusion right then, if it's too heated, then you wait and walk away and come back together and talk about it again.
Did anybody want to, Patrice, anybody wanted to speak? Because it's like Diana and I and Patrice too said, oh, we wish we could see people. Hopefully, as we continue these conversations, we'll be able to see each other. I mean, y'all can see us, I think, but we can't see y'all. I want to see y'all. But if you ever see us on the street, walk up and say, I was in the webinar and I'm so and so and so and so. Let us know.
I can see y'all.
Yeah. Oh, they said, Richard said, I can see y'all. Cool. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Anybody else? It's
always great to remove the emotion.
I get emotional at times because I wish the individual would listen and stop trying to help me say what I'm trying to say. Oh yeah. Yep. And that happens a lot with for Black people. A lot of times white people want to interpret what we just said as if other folk didn't understand it. They're not listening either. They've already surmised what it is we mean or need to say. Sometimes my white colleagues, like Diana said, you heard what she said. She don't need to interpret it for me. And she doesn't do that. It's like, if folk want more clarity, then ask me. But also know and check our listening skills. You're listening, but are you hearing people?
Right.
Saying that's different. Yeah, you listening, but are you hearing me? Mm-hmm. I walked up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dee.
Our natural reaction when somebody told me I'm doing something wrong is to defend myself. And that's the hardest thing it was for me to get over. I didn't really mean that. That's not what I said. And we have to just say, help me understand. You do not have to defend yourself. When people of color correct me, they want me to do better. Otherwise, they would not waste their words on me at all. So I understand that they want me to be better, so I can try to be better. Whereas when white people are talking to other white people, we have a tendency to shame and blame. So we're so used to when someone criticizes us that you're saying I'm the problem, right? Not that I made a mistake, but I'm the mistake. So anyway, go ahead, Barbara, and say what you were going to read.
Oh, no, I was just reading. Richard say he gonna do a Ebola elbow if hugs aren't ready yet. If we see him, although I'm fully inoculated, so I'm good for a hug. I hear you, baby. Me too. So yeah, just walk up. Just be. I got to get that hug. That's how I go in this city. I think y'all have shed light on what's so important, which is to talk to our kids almost from the very beginning. But for adults, it's about listening. That's a good way to put it. And that adults talk to adults, so that it makes it easier when you're not by yourself, when you talk to other adults about how you're talking to the kids. But one of the things is we learn as adults, us learning to talk to each other and to hear each other. It makes it easier for us then to translate that to kids. Absolutely.
And if a person of color gets mad at me for something I did, I have to listen to the anger, because they, there's a reason for them being angry, and I have to be able to accept that they're angry at me because I represent all white people when I meet somebody of color. And remember that we represent all white people and everything that's ever been done to them. So listening might be a way to soften the discussions.
None of y'all want to talk?
Then we see Richard.
Because Patrice know how to do your voice, the voice thing where you can talk, we can hear you. I think that's what she said. Is that right, Patrice? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yeah, so if anybody want to say something, if y'all want to tell Diana to not talk to y'all no more, we okay. Because nobody ever says that to me, of course. Really?
I'm just going to take a minute to read you this other
Please.
study that was done, and it's about what I think was, Barbara and I think was about implicit bias. They had the gifted and talented program in Aurora, Colorado. And the way that children were picked for gifted and gifted and talented was the teachers would nominate the students. And so they decided to do it differently. They decided, instead of just giving those children that were nominated for gifted and talented, they would give everybody in the school the test for gifted and talented. Now, these are teachers that care about their students. In this particular district that they were in, there were 15% white, 54% Latina, Latinx, 19% Black, and 4% Asian. So they not only gave everyone the test, but they made the test more centered around the population, which I just read to you: Latinos, like Blacks, white, and Asians. And so after the test, this is what happened to the demographics. The demographics in the gifted and talented changed dramatically. They say Hispanic, I like to say Latinx, representation increased by 8%. Black representation increased by 9%. Asian representation was reduced by 5%. And white representation was reduced by 10%. These are good teachers that they think, they were mostly white teacher and they're going to pick more white people. But also what happened is the district also found that the numbers included more girls, more immigrants, more English language learners, and more free and reduced lunch students. So this is the way we look at the world without knowing that. Look at the damage that we were doing to those children of color, because we can't interpret, we can't evaluate them the same way we evaluate white kids.
What's really hard is talking to white friends about racist decisions they've made, even though they would never admit it. So I just don't. Not very honest or productive, but I feel complicit. Yeah, Tania, yeah, that, because it is. It's like, look, I know it's hard to talk to folk, but Diana always said she talked to white people, say, look, I'm white, it's hard talking to my people. She can talk to you better about that than I can. I mean, I can do it, but I like for white people to work with white people and help developing strategies and design to engage other white people. But white people who have a solid understanding of what it is, beyond just the biases, because we all have those, but biases come from this toxic society and culture that we live in. But Diana, you want to respond to that?
Well, and this, you might think I'm sounding Pollyanna-ish in this, but you have to care so much about racism that you want to make the white people know you care about them and you want them to change. And that's what's, I've been more effective by really caring about them and seeing something strong in them and that kind of thing. And then they have a better chance of listening. When we usually talk to people, we like to make them wrong, and nobody wants to be wrong. Like I did that in the beginning with Barbara, believe me. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be on the wrong side of racism. So when I saw that she really cared about me and she really cared about Jim and she really cared about my family, I could listen a lot more than I was able to listen before that.
Oh, Stacy said, yes, it is tough, but I'm getting better.
Mhm.
It takes practice.
Yep.
You know, that's what builds your strength. I mean, what built my capacity to take on white people or anybody has been taking them on and getting my butt kicked and being pushed back, going to study. So when I come back again, I'm clear and I'm clearer. It's not an easy task.
And I will have to be totally honest that I try to care about white people and let them hear the truth. But sometimes I really realize that some white folks just got to die off. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
right? They're just,
I mean, hey. Oh, wait, there's a great story around the same subject in the Freakonomics book about names
oh, right.
on resumes or college. Exactly. Like if your name, the same kind of studies. Your name is Shaniqua. Your resume going in the garbage can.
And
Your
my,
name is,
when we were
yes.
talking about that, and because she knew she wasn't getting interviews because her name was Maisha. And I just made the comment, it would be okay with me if you used your middle name, which is Elizabeth. And she thought about it and said, no. She said, I'm not going to change my name and not change it, but use another name. So there's very many things we have to think about that on resumes or college admissions.
Same thing happens if you're selling your house. Take
Yeah.
all the pictures of your black family down. Don't
Yeah.
have nothing in there letting folk know that
Mhm.
you black. It devalues your house. That's how insidious this stuff is. So a realtor will tell you, take it, move it, unless you're selling it to some black folk. But if you black, my niece just went through this in right outside of Baton Rouge, selling her house. Now her husband put his life on the line every day. He a state trooper, but they knew that they couldn't have really said, you will get your price if you make sure when they come see the house that there's nothing in this house that lets them know that you're black.
Yep, yep.
Hey, this is crazy, y'all. It really is.
It's true. And listen, when you guys, and we'll read those last comments, but I just want to say, please let us know how we could make this better. It's been very hard on Barbara and I because we can't see you and we
Yeah.
can't see your reactions. So Barbara,
Yeah.
you want to read
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I see, Tania. I struggle with the phrase people of color. I find it annoying that it lumps people together whose only commonality is not being white. I find it offensive, but I hear it in the media all the time. Thoughts on this? I usually say BIPOC, Black folk, and had to lift that up because of the anti-Black sentiments in this country and globally. Everybody been lumped. White folk too. They used to be of European ethnicity, but they being lumped. That lumping is not like we all get along because we people of color. We know that. But it is about a political statement in terms of opposition of a white supremacist construct. But people can call themselves, like I don't name people, people can call themselves what they are. Me personally, I define myself as African American and Black. African American because I am that culture, that indigenous culture is here. That's value systems, sure, has some of the African sentiments in that, but I am also Black, which ties me to the African diaspora, Black folk all over the world. There is, until we are at a point in this country where people are defined by their ethnicity, by their culture, that's different. But people of color is just like Black as a political term. And the color, nobody.
Can
But
you,
We
it is.
are,
can
Yeah.
you, I
I'm
know we're
sorry.
almost up, but will you read Stacy's, Barbara? Will you read
Yes,
what Stacy
Stacy.
said?
Where is Stacy?
Thank you all so
I,
much. You see it?
I
Go up
can't.
a little bit, go up a little.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. Their name's
Oh,
Stacy.
thank y'all so much. I've always talked to my kids about brown people. I'm finding that I always meant Black people. Now I'm having to address issues with my teen about Asians. I just don't have the right words. I feel like I'm having to convince them, my own children. Yeah, let me tell you, this color coordination, this color construct is embedded in the whole system, and it is. And with and folk are not understanding that the attacks on people of Asian descent. Because when you say Asian American, that's so many different cultures, but it is the lumping of all these different cultures to designate which group is either being targeted. But what's happening to folk of Asian descent now still comes out of white supremacy. It is racism. It's almost to me like, okay, Asians seem to be the new flavor of the day. But I want to be clear, the attacks on people of Asian descent is not something that just started, y'all. Folk of Asian descent been being attacked in this country.
So, Patrice, I know you want us to finish at 7:29.
Yeah, we got like a minute. I want to thank folk, but Patrice, you got to close.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. I was just getting ready to, I know that Richard wanted to speak. So if I can, Richard, I'd like to just give you the last few minutes to say what you need to say. Just wanted to share with everyone that you will receive resources by the end of the week, and the evaluation is critical in how we take this series moving forward. So please share your honest opinions about how we can do differently, make this session slightly different. Whatever your thoughts are, we appreciate it. Richard.
And I want to say, Patrice, for these conversations to continue, folk from the community got to say they want to continue these conversations. You can't carry this at that parenting center by yourself, because that's often what happens. We have a person of color, a Black woman, who is raising this, and she didn't do it by herself because Jenny was there as part of that. You had a cohort. But they can't do this by themselves to push these the continuation of these conversations. So whatever way you all can support them. And it don't just have to be us. I don't care if you bring a conversation on that deals with transphobia, whatever, for conversations to move us further in building more authentic relationships, then support them in doing that. And I'm sorry, Patrice, I just need
to really get to hear we get to see one face.
That's okay. Richard, Tyler says, thank you so much. This has been so good. Y'all are awesome. Emma says she wants to keep talking. Would love to have you in person. Richard, you have the mic.
Hey, Richard.
Thanks, everybody. I just was, I missed last week, and I was going to say that I took 21 hours of history at Louisiana Tech, and I learned more in that 1 hour 2 weeks ago, part one, than I did, in those 7 classes. And fully intend to, do what you guys are suggesting, speak with our young mentees, and hopefully y'all can facilitate some of those conversations, because I'm sure they'll be difficult. But that's what the Son of Saint organization is good for, right? We have a bunch of people on like yourselves.
All right.
But thanks for y'all's time, and thanks for y'all's.
Yo, Sonny, I say, hey, Richard.
Okay, Ms. Barbara, I will. I don't see him that frequently, but
I know, I know. We haven't had coffee or anything lately, but thank you all for doing what you do. Thank you all of you mentors. Thank you.
We'd love to have them in person also.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
on behalf of the Parenting Center and Ms. Barbara and Ms. Diana, we bid you
guys
a great night.
Be
we
safe.
Want to continue these conversations. So
take care of yourselves and each other, please.
Mwah.
Bye, y'all.
See you guys later. Have a good night, ladies.
Patrice, we'll talk to you soon. After you get the evaluations, then we can all talk again, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay. When you just call us, we'll be here. So, because we gotta get our stuff in the resources that we want her to send.
I'll get it to you, I promise.
Absolutely. Right. And we can do a debrief tomorrow or the next day. I'll send you guys a follow-up email, and we can go from there.
How about
all right.
Friday?
Okay, Patrice, get some rest.
Barbara,
what time? Patrice, what time works for you tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Earlier the better.
The earlier the better for me too.
Okay, what time?
Can I send you guys in an email a couple of dates, or?